1, 2, 3. This is Dr. Alex Avila, and we're live at the Festival of Books, Los Angeles. This is Love University, and I'm an author, speaker, and psychologist. And every week we talk about how to love yourself, others, and higher nature, and how to improve your life. And today we have a very special guest we're very excited to have on board, Lisa Firestone. Lisa, are you there?
I am. Hi.
Beautiful,
Thank you.
beautiful.
Welcome.
Lisa is a clinical psychologist, co-author of Conquer Your Critical Inner Voice, Live Free from Imagined Limitations. She's appeared on hundreds of TV shows, radio and print interviews. She's collaborated with her esteemed father, psychologist Robert Firestone, on assessment for suicide and violence. She's the director of research education for Glendon Institute, parenting, couples therapy, and violence prevention. Welcome aboard, Lisa.
Thank you. The only one you didn't mention was I'm senior editor of Psych Alive, which is a mental health
Well, perfect.
general public.
Oh,
yeah,
excellent. You got so many things, huh? I guess it was the critical inner voice that got to me. I forgot that one. So, so tell us, you write about the inner voice, which some people call it the critical voice or other terms. So tell us a little bit about that. What is the critical inner voice that we have?
It's those thoughts that really undermine us. I mean, we really see it as the kind of language of our psychological defensive process. It's the thoughts that talk us out of doing the things we really want to do, encourages us to do things that might not be in our best interest, and gives us bad advice kind of continuously. It's a very undermining, negative thought process that we all have to some degree, self-doubts when we go to speak, or self-doubts when we join a new group of people or start a new job. So it's something we all have to some degree. And that's what we're referring to. For some people, it's much more serious. It's encouraging them to engage in very self-destructive behavior.
Yes, I can see that. And it seems like there's two kinds. There's what we call the degrading or very self-destructive or is critical. And then you have what's kind of like a seductive one that says, let's get another piece of that ice cream cake. Let's go out and do something. So why do people get so comfortable with these inner thoughts and even become like their friend? I think you say that people become lonely without them sometimes.
Right, because they're so used to them. They start very early in our life. Small children have them, if you ask them, by the way. And there are two forms to it. There are the seductive, seemingly self-protective thoughts. Those are at their ultimate end actually can lead to aggressive behavior toward others. Then there's the ones that are more degrading to ourselves and critical of ourselves. Those lead to bad behavior toward ourselves.
Yeah, and I also wonder where these come from. I think you talk a lot about parents, kind of like an interject where we adopt the parents' voices. But I'm wondering, what if you have a great childhood and people around you are wonderful, but you still have these negative inner voices? I don't know, maybe because of your appearance or you're shy or something. Could this also be genetic in some ways? Are there other ways to get these inner voices besides your parents?
Right. So, I mean, first of all, nobody has a perfect childhood. Really good parents get it right about 30% of the time.
Well, that's good.
Just let's be clear that, all parents, and the problem with being a parent, I'm a parent and you may be as well, and probably many of your listeners, but
yes.
The reality is that as parents, we're real people, right? So we have mixed feelings about ourselves. The ways we feel positively about ourselves are great. Our kids pick those up naturally, but the ways we feel negatively about ourselves, they pick up too. So as a parent, if you call yourself stupid every time you make a mistake, your child doesn't think, oh, my mom is stupid. They think, I'm stupid. So the negative thoughts that parents have about themselves get conveyed as well, even though they may not be spoken to the child.
Right.
We also
Lisa,
pick up
yes, go ahead.
acting toward us at different times. And it's not only parents, it's other important caretakers. It can be older siblings. Anybody who's been in junior high remembers that kids can be mean, right? Peers.
Yes.
Contribute to this.
And
then as adults, we can adopt new critical inner voices based on, failed relationships or rejections or disappointments we experience.
Yes. Now, that Kagan did research on the sensitive or inhibited child that, a certain percentage of them have a kind of a natural predisposition to social phobia. Could there be some genetic component? Could someone just have a very shy nature, perhaps? And that could create an inner voice that's negative.
Yeah, there are people who are really shy. Like most things, I think there's nature and nurture involved. I think that shyness is a temperament trait that some kids have, as is fearlessness and some others. Each of them have positives and negatives, but they really interact with how you're parented early in life. So if you have a shy child, it's really important parents that are kind of supportive and have your back, but also kind of push you to take some risks. Now, that doesn't mean, pushing you out into social situations where you're just going to freeze. And it doesn't mean overprotecting you and never exposing you to those. It means taking you to slightly challenging situations and giving you a little push gently. If you do that with a child with shy temperament, by the time they're an adult, they won't be shy. So, it really does depend on early parenting. Fearlessness, too, which can be a great trait, often terrifying to parents because it's the child who, will run out in the dark and doesn't care.
Yes, I understand. I'm an introvert and shy person myself. I wrote a book called The Gift of Shyness, looking at some of the positives. But the other thing that's interesting, Lisa, and this is, maybe you can explain this concept. You talked about the fantasy bond, that apparently children fantasize about their parents more than maybe the parents give them attention. And then you say later in adult relationships, people have a fantasy about a relationship. So how does that work in terms of adult relationships?
It worked well. The first thing is that we formed those to the degree that we weren't getting what we needed when we were little. So we, the baby whose parent walks away and they put their thumb in their mouth and they have the fantasy that their parent's still there comforting them. We form these fantasies of wanting to be merged with another person to feel safe. And again, they're proportional to the degree that we suffered deprivation or pain early in our life. So if you had a really great childhood, you're going to have less of this. If you had a lot of deprivation or painful experiences, you're going to have more. Now, when we get to be adults, we tend to do what Dr. Laura Smith Benjamin calls the copying effect. We either find partners who are going to treat us very much like we were treated as a child, and we form that same kind of fantasy connection with them, or we find a partner where we treat them the way we were treated as a child and act it out on them, or if all else fails, we do it for ourselves. We start to self-parent in the way we were parented, both punishing ourselves and trying to soothe ourselves. And we tend to carry this throughout our lives. And the problem with when it comes out in an adult romantic relationship is it really kills the attraction. The person becomes merged with you. They become like your right arm. You're not really very more interested in them than you are in your right arm. Except if they leave you, of course, you feel devastated, like you lost your right arm. And that's when the strong feelings will come up.
Yes. Now, Lisa, you and your dad, I believe you work with your dad. Is that true on these things, Robert Firestone?
It is. Being a psychologist,
that's great.
Family
you must have a great family to work with each other. That's always a challenge sometimes.
Sure, and it is a challenge at times, but it really is very cool. I now have an adult son who's a psychologist too, so it just happens in our family. I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly. Now, you said there's a 5-step process to deal with this bond, deal with the critical inner voice. One is to identify the voice. So you talk about having a journal where you have the critical versus the real you. And you say talk in the second person. You say you're dumb, or you're not attractive, or whatever. But instead of saying I, why does the you person better for that?
Well, a couple of really interesting things happen when you have people say it that way. They usually start with the thoughts they're aware of on the surface, and what they get to quite quickly are core beliefs they have about themselves. And also, we see this as a negative overlay on the personality. You did come into the world with whatever you came into the world with, temperament and things, but you really adopt this as kind of an overlay on your personality, and it doesn't represent the real you. And I'll give you an example for myself. Is that I was a very shy person too, and I thought this was just my nature. But I really got encouraged by somebody I trusted to go out and do public speaking. And here's as somebody who had never spoken in school all through up until graduate school. And I ended up really loving doing it. And I ended up doing it and it being an important part of and a satisfying part of my career. So a lot of these critical inner voices try to define you and put you in a box. And you want to try to break out of that. And the first step is to identify them and to separate them from your real point of view. And that's why we have them put it in the second person.
I see. Now, the other thing you mentioned that's very interesting is to talk back to the voice. And you say, I'm smart, I'm not stupid. But the question is, Lisa, how can you defeat something that exists on the same level? How can you defeat thought with more thought? Don't we need something like an emotion or a faith that's higher than the thought to defeat it?
Right. Well, one thing is when you put it in the second person, also the emotion that goes with these thoughts comes up. That's the other reason for the second person. Wow. It brings up the emotion. It makes it a hot cognition, if you will, or a thought you can, yes, you need the emotion there to really shift the way you're thinking about yourself. So it's important to say it with the full feeling, the way you hear it in your head. Sometimes having a person say it over and over and say it louder, it really starts to bring up the feeling. And often there's a lot of rage at ourselves that we're not really aware of on the surface. But it's really important to tie it to those emotions, because that's the part that makes you want to stand up for yourself. I mean, if somebody else ranted at you and was very, hostile toward you, you would want to defend yourself. And what we're trying to help people do is to defend themselves against these internal enemies that are much stronger, have much more access to everything that goes on in our lives than anybody else, And the second step really in the process is to try to understand, where do these thoughts come from? And to do that, you can just kind of sift through your mind of any images, feelings, thoughts that might come up that link these to your past. Was this something you were called in your past? Was it a feeling you felt in your family?
Lisa, well, this is fascinating stuff, and we really appreciate having you on the show. The inner voice is I think it's a revolutionary concept. It really takes cognitive behavioral psychology to another level, and you guys have done amazing work. We really appreciate it. Where can we learn more about your work? Do you have a website or books or seminars that you guys do?
Yes, if you go to our website, psychalive.org, you can see all of our upcoming webinars, our e-courses that we have. Also, we have a YouTube channel under psychalive.org. Also, you'll be able to find out about any workshops we're going to do coming up. And that's probably the best way for people to access our work. And we do have books, but you can also find out about those on our website.
That's incredible. So, Lisa, again, it's been a pleasure. I'd love to have you back on again on another time and really go even more into depth, talk more about this. And if you're in LA, I don't know, where are you in LA, or where are you located?
I'm located in Santa Barbara, but going to LA is not something I can.
Well, it's a little drive up the coast, or either way, we can still do another Skype if you like, and we'd love to have you back on. And we're live at the book fair, everyone. Dr. Alex Avila, Love University. So it's time to move on to our next lecturer. And it's been a pleasure. So put away your pens, notepads, iPads, and phone books. And we'll see you next time. Love University, Dr. Avila.